It was a warm Sunday afternoon in downtown Los Angeles when a group of 5 motorcycle club members pulled into the parking lot of Joe's Diner, a modest establishment known for its classic American comfort food. The leather-clad bikers, led by their unofficial leader Mike Thunder Thompson, were looking for a place to grab lunch after their morning ride through the canyons. As they dismounted their own weathered Harley-Davidsons, Thunder's attention was immediately drawn to a sleek, black arch motorcycle parked near the diner's entrance. The custom-built machine, worth well over $80,000, stood out like a jewel among the other vehicles in the lot. Its pristine condition and sophisticated design spoke of wealth and privilege, everything Thunder and his crew resented. "Would you look at that pretty boy toy?" Thunder sneered, running his calloused hand along the motorcycle's expensive carbon fiber bodywork. "Bet some rich Hollywood type thinks they can just roll in here and show off their fancy ride to us common folk." The other bikers gathered around the arch, admiring its craftsmanship while simultaneously feeling a surge of jealousy. Danny, the youngest of the group at 23, whistled low. "That's one of them Arch KRGT ones. They only make like 20 of these a year. Some serious money right there." "Well, maybe we should teach its owner a lesson about flaunting their wealth in our neighborhood," Thunder suggested, pulling out his key ring. The metal edges gleamed in the California sun as he contemplated using them to scratch the motorcycle's immaculate paint job. Inside Joe's Diner, completely unaware of the scene unfolding in the parking lot, sat Keanu Reeves. The Hollywood star was enjoying a quiet lunch with two of his stunt coordinators from his latest film project. Dressed in simple jeans and a black t-shirt, he blended in with the other patrons, occasionally glancing out the window at his beloved Arch motorcycle, a machine he had helped design through his own company, Arch Motorcycle. Back in the parking lot, Thunder made the first move. He dragged his keys along the gas tank, leaving an ugly gash in the perfect paint. The sound of metal scraping against metal made Danny wince, but he didn't dare speak up against his leader. The other bikers, encouraged by Thunder's actions, joined in. One loosened the side mirrors, another began tampering with the brake lines, while a third kicked at the exhaust system. Sarah Martinez, a waitress who had been working at Joe's for over a decade, noticed the commotion through the diner's large front window. She immediately recognized both the motorcycle and its famous owner, having served Keanu several times before. Her heart raced as she watched the vandalism unfold. "Those idiots have no idea what they're getting themselves into," she muttered under her breath, wringing her hands in her apron. Sarah had always known Keanu to be one of the kindest, most generous customers who frequented the diner. He always left generous tips and remembered the staff's names, treating everyone with genuine respect. Making her decision, Sarah hurried over to Keanu's booth. "Mr. Reeves," she said quietly, trying not to draw attention from other customers, "I'm so sorry, but there are some men outside. They're vandalizing your motorcycle." Keanu set down his coffee cup and turned to look out the window. His expression remained surprisingly calm as he watched the bikers continuing their destructive work. His stunt coordinator friends tensed, ready to jump into action, but Keanu raised his hand slightly, signaling them to stay put. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice carrying its familiar gentle tone. "I'll handle this." The scene in the parking lot had escalated. Thunder and his crew had already caused thousands of dollars worth of damage to the motorcycle, their actions becoming more brazen with each passing minute. They were so engrossed in their vandalism that they didn't notice the diner's door opening or the sound of boots slowly approaching them from behind. None of them realized that they were about to come face to face with not just the owner of the motorcycle they were destroying, but one of Hollywood's most beloved actors, a man known as much for his kindness and humility as for his action movies. The next few moments would change their lives in ways they could never have anticipated, and the story of what happened next would soon spread throughout Los Angeles's biker community, becoming something of an urban legend. To be continued in Part 2. Thunder was in the middle of loosening the bike's fuel cap when a deep, calm voice spoke behind him. "That's a beautiful machine, isn't it?" The bikers froze. There was something eerily familiar about that voice. As they turned around, their faces transformed from aggressive sneers to looks of absolute horror. Standing before them, hands casually in his pockets, was Keanu Reeves himself. "Oh shit," Danny whispered, his face turning pale. The young biker took several steps backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. The others stood paralyzed, their tools and keys still in their hands. Thunder's face had lost all its color. Not only had they been caught vandalizing a motorcycle, but it belonged to John Wick himself. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on any of them. They had specifically targeted this bike because it looked expensive, only to discover it belonged to one of Hollywood's most respected actors. We, Mr. Reeves, Thunder stammered, dropping his keys as if they had suddenly become red hot. We didn't know. We weren't. Keanu stepped forward, his expression remaining surprisingly gentle. He walked past the nervous bikers and ran his hand along the now damaged gas tank of his motorcycle. The fresh scratches caught the sunlight, making the vandalism even more apparent. You know, Keanu said, still examining the damage, I helped design this bike. Every curve, every component was carefully chosen. It's not just about the money or the luxury. It's about the craft, the passion for riding. He turned to face the group. I'm guessing you guys understand that passion, being riders yourselves. The bikers exchanged uncomfortable glances. They had expected yelling, threats, or even the police. Instead, they were getting a calm lecture about motorcycle craftsmanship from Keanu Reeves. Sarah and several other diner patrons had gathered at the windows, watching the scene unfold. Many had their phones out, ready to record what they assumed would be an explosive confrontation. Instead, they witnessed something entirely different. Mr. Reeves, Thunder spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. I take full responsibility for this. It was my idea. I'll pay for all the damages. Even as he made the offer, everyone knew there was no way he could afford the repairs to such an expensive machine. Keanu nodded thoughtfully. The damage is significant, but that's not what concerns me most. He looked each biker in the eye. What concerns me is what made you want to destroy something beautiful just because you thought it belonged to someone more privileged than you. Danny, the youngest biker, suddenly burst into tears. We're sorry, Mr. Reeves. We were being stupid and jealous. I've always dreamed of riding a bike like this, and seeing it here. We just lost it. The actor's expression softened even more. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. The bikers tensed, thinking he was going to take out a business card for his lawyer. Instead, he retrieved a small card with an address printed on it. This is the address of my motorcycle company, Arch Motorcycle, he said, handing the card to Thunder. Come by tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., all of you. We'll talk about how you can make this right. Thunder stared at the card in disbelief. You're not calling the cops? Would that help anyone? Keanu replied. I think we can find a better solution, one that might teach us all something. As the bikers stood there, shocked by this unexpected turn of events, Keanu turned to examine his motorcycle once more. It needs some work now, but you know what? Every scratch tells a story. Maybe this one will have a good ending. The group watched in amazement as Keanu swung his leg over the damaged bike and started it up. The engine roared to life, still powerful despite the vandalism. Before riding off, he turned to the bikers one last time. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't be late. And bring your passion for motorcycles, just leave the destructive tendencies at home. As Keanu rode away, the 5 bikers stood in stunned silence. Around them, the diner patrons who had witnessed the scene began to disperse, many shaking their heads in amazement at what they had just seen. Thunder looked down at the card in his hand, then at his fellow bikers. Well, he said quietly, I guess we have an appointment tomorrow. To be continued in Part 3. The next morning, at exactly 8:45 a.m., Thunder and his crew pulled up to the Arch Motorcycle Company headquarters in Hawthorne, California. They had barely slept the night before, torn between shame over their actions and nervous anticipation about what awaited them. The modern industrial building stood before them, its sleek design a stark contrast to the rough-looking group of bikers. Maybe this is a trap, muttered Pete, the oldest member of their group. Could be the cops waiting inside. But Thunder shook his head. No, there was something in his eyes yesterday. He meant what he said. Taking a deep breath, he led his crew toward the entrance. As they approached the glass doors, they saw Keanu already waiting for them inside. He was dressed casually in jeans and a black t-shirt, looking more like a regular mechanic than a Hollywood star. When he opened the doors, the smell of oil, metal, and leather wafted out, the familiar scent of a high-end motorcycle workshop. You're early, Keanu said with a slight smile. That's a good start. The bikers followed him into the facility, their boots echoing on the polished concrete floor. The workshop was immaculate, with several partially assembled motorcycles in various stages of completion. Each bike was a work of art, combining raw power with elegant design. First things first, Keanu said, stopping near a workbench. I want you to meet someone. He gestured to a man in coveralls who approached the group. This is Gard Hollinger, my business partner and the co-founder of Arch Motorcycle. Gard looked at the bikers with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. So these are our vandals, he said, crossing his arms. Keanu told me what happened. He also told me his crazy idea. The bikers shifted uncomfortably, but Keanu continued. Here's the deal. The damage you caused to my bike yesterday will cost about $12,000 to repair properly. I know none of you can afford that. Thunder's heart sank, but Keanu wasn't finished. So instead of money, I want your time and labor. Each of you will work here at Arch for the next 3 months, 2 days a week. You'll learn how these bikes are built, help with maintenance, and understand what goes into creating something instead of destroying it. The bikers stood in shocked silence. Danny was the first to speak up. You're offering us jobs? No, Gard corrected. He's offering you an education and a chance to make amends. Keanu walked over to a covered motorcycle in the corner and pulled off the tarp. It was his bike from yesterday, the scratches and damage still visible in the morning light. This will be your first project. You're going to help restore it, learning every step of the process. For the next hour, Keanu and Gard gave them a tour of the facility, explaining the various stations and processes. The bikers' initial nervousness gradually gave way to genuine interest as they saw the precision and craftsmanship that went into each motorcycle. I never knew so much work went into these machines, Thunder admitted, examining a handcrafted fuel tank. We just ride them, you know. Never thought about what it takes to build one from scratch. Keanu nodded. That's exactly why I wanted you here. Sometimes understanding how something is made changes how you value it. As the tour concluded, Gard handed each of them a work schedule and a stack of paperwork to fill out. Be here Saturday morning at 7 a.m. sharp. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty. And remember, this is a privilege, not a punishment. Before they left, Keanu pulled Thunder aside. Yesterday, you led your crew in destroying something. Now you have a chance to lead them in creating something. Make it count. As the bikers walked back to their motorcycles, they were quieter than usual, each lost in their own thoughts. The weight of Keanu's unexpected generosity and the opportunity before them had shifted something in their perspectives. You know what's crazy? Danny said as they prepared to leave. We tried to teach some rich guy a lesson yesterday, but we're the ones who ended up getting schooled. Thunder looked back at the building, where Keanu and Gard were already busy with their day's work. Sometimes, he said thoughtfully, the best lessons come from the last person you'd expect to teach them. To be continued in Part 4. Saturday morning arrived faster than any of the bikers expected. Thunder was the first to arrive at Arch Motorcycle Company, pulling into the parking lot at 6:45 a.m. One by one, his crew joined him, all of them looking nervous but determined in their fresh work clothes. Gard met them at the door, carrying several sets of new work boots and safety equipment. First rule of working here, he said, handing out the gear, safety isn't optional. These are yours to keep. The bikers exchanged surprised looks as they held their new steel-toed boots. They hadn't expected to receive anything. They were here to pay a debt, after all. Inside, they found Keanu's damaged motorcycle positioned in the center of the workshop, surrounded by tools and equipment. Keanu was already there, going through some paperwork at a nearby desk. Before we start, Keanu said, putting down his papers, I want you to understand something. Every bike that leaves this shop tells a story. This one, he gestured to his damaged motorcycle, now has an interesting story to tell. Let's make sure the ending is worth remembering. The first task was documentation. Gard taught them how to properly photograph and catalog each piece of damage, explaining how this was crucial for both repairs and insurance purposes. Danny, who had always been interested in photography, took to this task naturally. See these scratches? Gard pointed to the gas tank. We're not just going to repaint it. We're going to remove the tank, strip it down, repair the metal, and rebuild it better than new. Everything we do here is about excellence. As the morning progressed, the bikers found themselves immersed in a world they never knew existed. Thunder, who had always considered himself knowledgeable about motorcycles, was humbled by the precision and expertise required for each task. Around noon, Keanu ordered pizza for everyone. As they sat eating, he shared stories about his own journey with motorcycles, from his first ride to the creation of Arch Motorcycle Company. "I've had my share of crashes and mistakes," Keanu admitted, "but each one taught me something. It's not about the falls, it's about how you get back up and what you learn from them." Pete, who had been quietly working all morning, spoke up. "Mr. Reeves, I've been riding for 30 years, but I've never seen craftsmanship like this. These aren't just motorcycles, they're art." Keanu smiled. "That's exactly what we believe here. Each bike is a collaboration between engineering and artistry, and please call me Keanu." After lunch, they began the actual restoration work. Under guards' careful supervision, they started dismantling the damaged parts. Every component was handled with respect, every step documented and explained. Thunder found himself working alongside Keanu on the fuel system. As they worked, Keanu explained the unique engineering choices that went into the design. "See this fuel line routing? We spent months perfecting it. Every detail matters." By late afternoon, the bikers were exhausted but satisfied. They had accomplished more than they expected, and each had found their own area of interest. Danny excelled at detail work, Pete showed a knack for diagnostic problems, and Thunder's natural leadership abilities emerged as he helped coordinate their efforts. Before they left, Keanu gathered them around the partially dismantled bike. "Today was just the beginning. You've started to see these machines differently, haven't you?" The bikers nodded. The motorcycle they had carelessly vandalized days ago now represented something more to them, a complex puzzle of engineering and design that demanded respect. "Next time," Guard added, "we'll start teaching you about the custom fabrication process. Each of you will have specific tasks to master." As they prepared to leave, Thunder noticed Danny lingering near one of the design sketches on the wall. "You okay, kid?" he asked. Danny turned, his eyes bright with excitement. "Thunder, I think I know what I want to do with my life now. This is it. Building something beautiful instead of destroying things." Thunder looked back at Keanu, who was already focused on his next task, showing no signs of the movie star he was known to be. Instead, he was just a craftsman, dedicated to his work and willing to teach others. "Yeah," Thunder replied. "I think we all learned something bigger than motorcycle repair today." To be continued in Part 5. Over the next few weeks, the transformation of both the motorcycle and the bikers became increasingly evident. The workshop at Arch Motorcycle Company had become their second home, with each member of Thunder's crew discovering their own unique talents and interests within the world of custom motorcycle building. One morning, as they arrived for their regular session, they found Keanu deep in conversation with a group of well-dressed businessmen, potential investors touring the facility. Instead of being asked to wait or come back later, Keanu waved them over. "These are some of our apprentice craftsmen," he said to the investors, causing the bikers to stand a little straighter at the unexpected title. "They're working on a special restoration project." Thunder felt a surge of pride as Keanu let him explain the complex repair work they'd been doing on the fuel system. The investors listened intently, clearly impressed by the technical knowledge he displayed, knowledge that just weeks ago he hadn't possessed. After the investors left, Danny approached Keanu with a sketch he'd been working on during his free time. It showed a modified version of an Arch motorcycle with some innovative design changes. "I've been thinking about the airflow problems we discussed last week," Danny explained nervously. "What if we adjusted the fairing like this?" He pointed to his detailed drawings. Keanu studied the sketches carefully, then called Guard over. Both men examined Danny's work with serious consideration. "This is actually quite innovative," Guard said, pointing out several aspects of the design to Keanu. "The kid has an eye for this." Pete, who had initially been the most skeptical about their arrangement, had discovered a talent for diagnostic work. He could often identify mechanical issues just by listening to an engine. That morning, he helped solve a persistent problem with a customer's bike that had stumped even the experienced mechanics. "It's like speaking another language," Pete explained to Thunder during their lunch break. "These machines, they talk to you if you know how to listen." But the most significant change was in Thunder himself. The angry, destructive impulses that had driven him to vandalize Keanu's bike were being channeled into creation and leadership. He found himself staying late after their scheduled hours, absorbing everything he could learn about motorcycle design and engineering. One day, as Thunder was meticulously reassembling a section of the damaged motorcycle, Keanu sat down beside him. "You know," Keanu said, "watching Thunder work, when I first started Arch, many people thought it was just a celebrity vanity project. They didn't understand that for me, it was about creation, about building something meaningful." Thunder paused his work, listening intently. "I see that same understanding in your eyes now," Keanu continued. "You're not just fixing a motorcycle anymore. You're creating something." Later that afternoon, a delivery arrived at the workshop. New custom tools for each of the bikers, with their names engraved on the handles. It was a gesture that spoke volumes about how far they'd come from being vandals to respected workshop members. The moment was interrupted by a commotion at the front of the shop. A group of young motorcyclists had arrived, their bikes loudly revving in the parking lot. Thunder recognized the behavior immediately. It was exactly how his crew used to act. Without hesitation, Thunder walked outside to confront them, but instead of aggression, he approached them with calm authority. "Hey," he called out to the group. "If you're interested in bikes, why don't you come inside and see how they're really built?" The young riders, caught off guard by the invitation, killed their engines. Thunder gave them a tour of the workshop, explaining the intricate processes involved in building custom motorcycles. He watched their expressions change from defiance to genuine interest, the same transformation he'd experienced weeks ago. Back inside, Keanu observed the scene with satisfaction. "Sometimes," he said to Guard, "the best way to stop a cycle of destruction is to show people how to create instead." As the day drew to a close, the damaged motorcycle was starting to look whole again, but more than just the bike had been restored. 5 men who had once channeled their frustrations into vandalism were finding new purpose in the art of creation. To be continued in Part 6. 2 months into their time at Arch Motorcycle Company, the restoration project was nearing completion. The once vandalized motorcycle had been transformed, not just back to its original state, but into something even more special. Each repair bore the unique signature of its restorers, telling a story of redemption through craftsmanship. One morning, Keanu called the group together before they started work. "Today's different," he announced, leading them to a covered area of the workshop. "I want to show you something." He pulled back a tarp to reveal 5 motorcycle frames in various stages of early assembly. The bikers stared in confusion until Guard explained. "These are customer orders," he said, "and you're going to help build them from the ground up. Not as punishment anymore, but as part of our team." Thunder's crew exchanged shocked looks. Danny was the first to speak. "You mean you're offering us real jobs?" "Part-time to start," Keanu clarified. "But yes, you've earned it. Each of you has shown exceptional skill in different areas. Danny's design innovations, Pete's diagnostic abilities, Thunder's leadership. We'd be foolish not to utilize those talents." The news hit them hard. These weren't just jobs. They were opportunities to be part of something they'd grown to respect and love. Thunder had to turn away for a moment, hiding the emotion in his eyes. Later that day, as they worked on their assigned projects, an unexpected visitor arrived at the shop. It was Sarah, the waitress from Joe's Diner who had witnessed the vandalism incident months ago. She stood in the doorway, barely recognizing the scene before her. The same men who had once angrily destroyed a motorcycle were now carefully crafting them, their movements precise and respectful. Thunder was teaching 2 new apprentices about proper tool handling, while Danny worked on complex design drawings at a nearby desk. "I brought lunch for everyone," Sarah announced, holding up several bags from the diner. "Thought you might be hungry." Over lunch, she shared how the story of what happened had spread through the community. "People still talk about it," she said. About how one act of forgiveness changed everything. Keanu, joining them for lunch, shook his head. It wasn't just forgiveness. It was about seeing potential where others saw problems. These guys just needed a different outlet for their passion. That afternoon, they finally completed the restoration of Keanu's motorcycle. As they stood around it, comparing photos of the damage to the finished product, the transformation was striking. The scratches were gone, replaced by immaculate paintwork. The mechanical systems weren't just repaired, they were upgraded and improved. Start it up, Keanu said to Thunder, tossing him the keys. Thunder caught them, surprised. You want me to? You helped rebuild it. You should hear it run. With trembling hands, Thunder inserted the key. The engine roared to life, its sound pure and powerful. The noise echoed through the workshop, but to the bikers, it was more than just an engine sound. It was the voice of their redemption. As the day went down, Guard gathered everyone for an announcement. Next week, we're hosting an open house for potential customers. We want you all here, not just as workers, but as representatives of Arch Motorcycle. Representatives? Pete asked, still not quite believing how far they'd come. Who better to explain our commitment to quality than the people who put their hearts into building these machines? Keanu added. Before leaving, Thunder lingered behind, looking at the motorcycle they'd restored. Keanu joined him. Something on your mind? Keanu asked. Just thinking about that day in the parking lot. Thunder replied. How different things could have been if you'd reacted like most people would have. Keanu smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is showing someone a better path. As Thunder rode home that evening, he passed Joe's Diner. The parking spot where they vandalized Keanu's bike was empty, but the memory remained. However, it no longer filled him with shame. Instead, it reminded him of how a single moment of destruction had led to months of creation, learning, and transformation. To be continued in Part 7. The day of the Arch Motorcycle open house arrived, bringing with it an unexpected mix of emotions for Thunder and his crew. The workshop had been transformed for the event, with spotlights illuminating the carefully arranged motorcycles. Among them stood the restored bike, now a testament to second chances. Journalists, motorcycle enthusiasts, and potential customers filled the space. The bikers, dressed in crisp Arch Motorcycle work shirts, found themselves in the unfamiliar position of being experts rather than outsiders. Danny was explaining the technical specifications of the engines to an impressed group of industry professionals, his previous nervousness replaced by confident knowledge. Did you hear about the kids' design innovations? Thunder overheard Guard telling a journalist. He's got a natural talent for motorcycle engineering. We're sponsoring his enrollment in technical school next semester. Pete had set up a diagnostic demonstration, showing visitors how to identify potential issues by sound alone. His gruff exterior had softened over the months, replaced by the patience of a natural teacher. A group of young mechanics hung on his every word. During the event, a familiar face appeared, Mike, the leader of a rival motorcycle club who had often clashed with Thunder's crew in the past. He stood at the entrance, taking in the scene with obvious confusion. Thunder? Mike called out, approaching cautiously. Is it true what they're saying about you guys working here? Thunder straightened his shoulders, pride evident in his stance. Want a tour? He offered, extending an olive branch to his former rival. As Thunder showed Mike around the facility, explaining the intricate processes and craftsmanship that went into each motorcycle, you could see the same transformation beginning in Mike's eyes that he had experienced months ago. We've got an apprenticeship program starting, Thunder mentioned casually. If you know anyone who might be interested in learning the right way to appreciate these machines. The highlight of the evening came when Keanu gathered everyone around the restored motorcycle. Camera flashes lit up the room as he began to speak. This bike has a unique story, he said, gesturing to Thunder and his crew. It's not just about restoration, it's about transformation. These craftsmen took something they once tried to destroy and turned it into something even more beautiful than before. Thunder felt his throat tighten as Keanu continued. But the real transformation wasn't in the motorcycle. It was in the hearts and minds of the men who rebuilt it. They proved that with the right guidance, passion can be redirected from destruction to creation. Later that evening, as the crowd began to thin, a young teenager approached Thunder. Is it true you used to be in a biker gang? He asked, eyes wide with curiosity. Thunder considered the question carefully. I used to think being tough meant destroying things, he replied. Now I know it takes more strength to create something beautiful. The boy looked at the motorcycles around them with newfound understanding. Could you teach me about bikes someday? That's exactly why we're here, kid, Thunder smiled, handing him a brochure for the apprenticeship program. As the event wound down, Keanu gathered Thunder's crew in his office. On his desk sat 5 envelopes, their official employment contracts with Arch Motorcycle Company. You've more than repaid your debt, Keanu said. But I hope you'll consider staying on permanently. We need people who understand both the machines and the journey it takes to respect them. Danny picked up his envelope with trembling hands. 3 months ago, I thought my life was going nowhere. Now I'm starting technical school and have a job at one of the best motorcycle companies in the world. Pete cleared his throat. You didn't just teach us about motorcycles, he said to Keanu. You taught us about dignity. Thunder looked around at his crew. No, his colleagues now. Each of them had found something they didn't even know they were looking for: purpose, respect, and the pride of creation. Outside, the restored motorcycle gleamed under the workshop lights, its scratches and dents long gone. But if you looked closely, you could still see the story it told, not of destruction, but of redemption. To be continued in Part 8. 1 year after the fateful day at Joe's Diner, Thunder stood in front of a crowd at Arch Motorcycle Company's annual showcase event. Behind him stood 5 custom motorcycles, each one representing months of work by his team. Former vandals turned master craftsmen. A year ago, Thunder began, his voice steady and confident. I was angry at the world. I took that anger out on a stranger's motorcycle, not knowing it belonged to someone who would change my life. He gestured to Keanu, who sat quietly in the audience. The showcase was featuring a special exhibition, The Journey of Transformation. It displayed photos documenting the restoration process of Keanu's vandalized motorcycle, alongside stories of how each team member had found their calling. Danny, now halfway through his technical engineering program, had designed a revolutionary new exhaust system that was being patented under Arch Motorcycle's name. His sketches had evolved from rough drawings to professional technical designs that impressed even veteran engineers. Pete had become the company's lead diagnostic specialist, running a training program for new mechanics. The same ears that once listened for police sirens now detected the slightest mechanical irregularity in an engine. The rest of Thunder's former crew had found their niches too. Each one had transformed their street skills into valuable trade craftsmanship. More importantly, they had become mentors to others seeking a second chance. During the showcase, Keanu unveiled a surprise: a new limited edition motorcycle model called the Phoenix. Its design incorporated elements from the restoration project that had started it all, including some of Danny's innovations. This bike, Keanu explained to the gathered crowd, represents rising from the ashes. It's proof that destruction isn't the end of the story. It's sometimes just the beginning. After the presentation, Thunder found himself back at Joe's Diner, sitting across from Keanu. Sarah, still working there, brought them coffee with a knowing smile. Remember what you said to us that first day? Thunder asked. About how every scratch tells a story. Keanu nodded, sipping his coffee. Well, I've been thinking, Thunder continued. Maybe some scratches need to happen so something better can be built in their place. Looking around the diner, Thunder noticed a group of young bikers outside, admiring the motorcycles parked there. Instead of feeling territorial or aggressive, he saw potential. Standing up, he walked outside to talk to them. Interested in bikes? He asked, reaching for the Arch Motorcycle business cards he now always carried. Let me tell you a story about how one motorcycle changed everything. Back inside, Keanu watched through the window as Thunder engaged with the young bikers, seeing the cycle of transformation continue. What had started as an act of vandalism had grown into a movement of redemption and opportunity. That evening, as Thunder locked up the workshop, he paused beside the original restored motorcycle, now displayed prominently in the shop's entrance. Its gleaming surface no longer showed any signs of that day's damage, but its story had become legend within the motorcycle community. A photo hung on the wall nearby, Thunder's crew on their first day at Arch, looking nervous and out of place, next to a recent picture of them in their company uniforms, proud and professional. Below it was a simple quote: "Every machine tells a story. Make yours worth telling." As Thunder headed home on his own Arch motorcycle, earned through months of dedicated work, he passed the spot where he had once led his crew in an act of senseless vandalism. But now, instead of anger and resentment, he felt gratitude. The next morning, a new group of apprentices would arrive at the workshop, each with their own stories of wrong turns and dead ends. Thunder would be there to greet them, ready to share the lessons he had learned about transformation, redemption, and the power of creation over destruction. And somewhere on the streets of Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves rode his restored motorcycle, not just a machine anymore, but a rolling reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things come from giving people a chance to rebuild what they once tried to destroy. The end.